You're listening to NYC Radio Live. David Ellenbogen here. This was a great show, really special. Probably one of my life thrills was hanging with Jaimoe of the Allman Brothers in 2014. It was the last run, it turned out to be, of shows at the Beacon. That's what brought him to town. And we got to hang. I ended up catching one of their last shows from backstage and spending some more time with him. Amazing guy. And the brothers are back. That's the new lineup. 10 years later, Warren Haynes and Dark Trucks are leading the charge of like a really exciting new Allman Brothers project. So yeah, this is a hang with Jaimoe, the original band member, drummer of the Allman Brothers, and we were hanging at WKCR. So, of course, in the podcast format, I can't play the music that he selected from the record archives, which he had a blast doing. He's a jazz head. But I will make a Spotify playlist. You could look up Jaimoe, NYC Radio Live, something like that. You'll find it on Spotify. So if you want to listen to all the selections that he chose, you can do it that way. And thanks for listening. So here's our Wayback Machine. Ready? Rewind. I can do that. We're going back to 2014, hanging with Jaimoe, Alan Paul, the great author of one of the Allman Brothers, like official authorized autobiographies, and John Coltelli, a guy very close to my heart, a jazz critic and professor who was influential in creating my acoustic mandala project back then, putting me together with the great musician Josh Geisler. All right, so here we are, 2014 at WKCR Studios with the legend Jaimoe. You're tuned to WKCR 89.9 FM New York. We have a very special guest in studio, none other than Jaimoe, the great drummer from the Allman Brothers Band. They are returning to the Beacon this week. Alan Paul is in the house as well. He just came out with you could call it the inside history, an oral history. It's all in the words of the Allman Brothers. And the book immediately rocketed to number 9 on the bestseller list. So we're really happy to have both these gentlemen. And Jaimoe is really responsible for bringing a lot of jazz modal improvisation into rock and roll music, let it find a new audience. It's also, Jaimoe, did you know this is the anniversary of the recording of At Fillmore East?
No.
Yeah, it is.
March.
So
I forgot that myself, even as the historian of the Allman Brothers Band. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, well,
we're also wrapped up in today.
Yeah,
it's a very important thing.
Well,
to stop
we're
in.
with the Professor John Coltelli, who put us all together, and
it's the 43rd anniversary of the recording of the album. It was the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th of March in 1971. So it's very, very coincidental that we should all be together today.
But anyway,
that's interesting that it's supposedly the anniversary of the band, the Allman Brothers Band.
Right,
really?
That's on March 26th. That's the day that we celebrate as the anniversary. I think seems it's a little shaky as to what day it really was, but it's that's the day that Greg walked into the rehearsal, joined the other 5 of you, and you became what we know as the Allman Brothers Band.
Not yet.
Well, I wanna jump into something. Here's a track, Jaimoe. I'll get your reflection on it after, and this predates the Allman Brothers as far as I know.
Jaimoe, what are your recollections of playing with James Carr? I just recently found that little clip on YouTube of James Carr singing, and it pulls back, and there's Jaimoe sitting behind the drums, cool as can be with his little shades on. I actually didn't know you had played with James. How was he as to back?
Real easy. James Carr and Sledge was a lot alike. James was more hard like Otis than Sledge was.
Hard, you mean hard, tough band leader, or hard?
Hmm?
You said hard.
Yeah, like Sledge is, had what kind of voice he has, but James was more like, was a lot like Otis's. The difference between Sledge and Otis, James, and I think James scared a lot of those people. And companies used to have a way of dealing with people like James. If there was a artist that they had put a lot of money into, they'd buy the contract and take it and put it on the shelf.
I see. Right.
Yeah.
So
James was one of those kind of guys, and a few other people.
And let's hear something about. I mean, Otis. He was already a star when you started playing with him, Otis Redding.
Yeah, I started playing with Otis in 1966. A guy called me, a friend of mine, guy who called me about a lot of gigs, a guy named, they called him Cadillac. They called him Cadillac because when Otis was gone somewhere to ride, to do a record or something, Donald Henry would jump right in the Cadillac as soon as he left. That's how he got the name Cadillac. But he called me about that gig, April 1966. And the other drummer I had gave a 2 weeks notice, Woody Woodson. And that's how I ended up with Otis's band. But then after the other drummer figured out that Otis wasn't going to give him a raise, then he stayed. It was like the Mexican standoff. The guy Woody Woodson. But Woody is the best guy I ever heard play Otis's music. I mean, he played Otis's music, man, as far as I was concerned, like, just excellent, man. Sweet and sour, nasty, hard. Woody was a hell of a drummer, man.
Now, I worked for a guy named George Ween, who maybe you knew of, producer, Newport producer.
Yeah, we did a gig with him, a couple of gigs with him. Mm-hmm. I think the first time I met him was when they had that Boston, the first Newport out of Boston in the Boston Gardens, was it?
In the Boston Garden?
74 something, was it?
Right. That was after the riots.
Yeah.
They had to get it out of.
That's the only thing I ever did that wasn't on my table of one day I'm going to do this, was playing the Newport Festival.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not too late.
We were standing outside when they pulled the gate, they pulled the fence down, man.
Oh, wow. You were there.
I was standing back there with, we were going into, what's her name was playing? Dionne
Sliding.
Warwick.
Oh, okay.
And the piano player with the nasty mouth. Anyway, he was back there, and they didn't know who he was, and he was upset. And he started calling them so and so and so's and so and so and so's, let me in. Meanwhile, the fences was going down. They had set sheets on fire on the fences, man. And so the guy was with us. He said, man, there's too much crazy stuff happening here. Let's get out of here. And the next day at 1 o'clock or something, George announced that there would be no more Newports.
Right. And apparently it was the Sly and the Family Stone were playing I Want to Take You Higher, and there was almost a riot the day before when Zeppelin were playing, but he came on stage and told them to play a slow blues, and that kind of calmed things down. But Sly just said, higher, and that's what did it, according to George. But the reason I brought him up is I'm not good with my facts, so I could be confused about who he was talking to, but I think it was Otis. He said, to save money, Otis would everybody would be be sharing beds in the hotel rooms and stuff like that. Like, it was a really tight operation financially.
Well, a lot of people did that. You roomed with other people. You roomed with other people, and that wasn't the reason. Because of Otis, it was partially and not. The reason you room with other people because if a room costs $80 and it was $40 between the two of you, you paid for your own room. Otis didn't pay for no rooms.
Okay.
Otis provided, and most of them provided transportation and bandware. Mm-hmm. Everything else was yours.
And how was he as a band leader? How did he operate?
As an artist, he had a band leader. He basically told somebody what he wanted, mm-hmm. and if they thought it wasn't correct, then he dealt with sound. He didn't deal with E7s and this and that and the other. And he say like, "This is what I hear," and he'd take that finger, man, and he would slide it everywhere he wanted, and he played these tones, you know. Mm-hmm. And he'd say, "You play this note, you play this note, you play this note," and when they played it, it all made sense. But when he was telling them what he wanted and what, you know, they said, "Man, Otis is crazy."
Right.
But he knew exactly what he wanted, and his timing. He showed me some stuff on drums just about timing, because he used to say, "Jay, you're rushing." I don't know what the hell he was talking about. As soon as I learned about time, I knew every time he ever told me I was rushing.
So he actually sat behind the drums and showed you some stuff.
Yeah, you should imagine that. A guy that size sitting down to a small set of drums like I got, you know, look like kid drums. He was a big man. He was a real big man. To tell you what, we did a gig in '66 when we was doing that tour that James Carr was on. Was it? Otis was the star. Sam and Dave was the co-star. James Percy Welch was the next in line. It's like these people who had the biggest records. They came in line like that. Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells, Garnet Mims, the Ovations, lady out of Birmingham. I can't think of her name now. Anyway, we did a show in Miami at the Dinner Key Auditorium, and this was back when they was having that Democratic thing, getting ready to run for that stuff.
Right.
And Otis and Ali was supposed to do a fake boxing match. Those two guys would do anything for a laugh, anything. And we were in the dressing room back there, and like everybody left out, just the two of them was back there and myself. And I said, "Can I get you guys to do me a favor?" He said, yeah. He said, "This is Jay, my drummer." I took him and stood him like this, side back to back, and Otis looked like this, and Ali looked like this. That's how big Otis was.
Wow. He's demonstrating that with his hands that Otis was more than a head taller than or something.
Not so much taller, but
bigger. Wow.
Yeah.
Like football player big.
Yeah.
And how was he as a drummer? I mean, could he have played in?
He could play time. I guess if he sit down and mess around with it a little bit, he could probably play anybody's gig in that kind of stuff, you know.
I hear stories, Jaimoe, where Otis was playing in the Apollo right here, a few blocks away on 125th Street. He went across the street to have a drink between sets, and some guy was giving him a hard time. And he took to nearly tarring and feathering this guy. You know, so he didn't hesitate. He used, you know, his stature wherever he went.
Oh, yeah. Boy, that's one on me.
Well, let's go to some music. I mean, I got a million questions, but one track or album that you know, Jaimoe, for those of you who don't know, is a real jazz aficionado, and you chose this album, Live at Pep's, Yusef Lateef, with Richard Williams on trumpet, Mike Knock on piano, Ernie Farrow on bass, and you chose James Black on drums. So what was it about James Black that you thought we should be...
James Black, out all the drummers that I studied and went through, I ended up basically with Tony Williams and James. And I never heard anybody play drums like James played. He took the instrument and it became not that other drummers didn't play musical, but it became a musical instrument under James, because he was an arranger, he was a composer, he played cornet, he played piano, he played bass, and he was one hell of a musician, man. And one of them cats, like they say, is on the edge, genius and insanity. But I never heard nobody play drums like that, man. It was almost like he had an ear for each instrument. He had studied percussions so well, as in tambourines, snare drums, bass drums, this and that and the other. And like the first cat to take it and all and put it all together and play them. I never heard anybody play drums like that.
Well, let's go. This is Sister Mamie from Yusef Lateef's Live at Pep's.
This time we like to do a tune. We call it Sister Mamie.
James Black on the drums. We just heard Yusef Lateef's Live at Pep's. So we're getting the story here. You're playing with all these legends of R&B. I think Sam and Dave you played with as well.
No.
No? Okay, I got that wrong.
They were on shows that I played with Otis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
I never played with those two guys.
Okay. Well, anyway, Percy Sledge, Otis Ray, that's enough. And you're playing with these killer guys, and then what happens? You get a call that there's some dude in Memphis Shoals studio who heard you on a record and wants to meet you. What happened there?
I got tired of that rhythm and blues circuit. One reason was that every time I'd go home to see my mother on a little break or something, I'd have to borrow money from her to go back to play with these stars, And when I left home in '68 and went to Macon, Georgia, the same guy, Cadillac, had called me up and he said, "Hey, J. Johnny," this is the way he talked. "Hey, J. Johnny, we gonna get together and go down to Macon, Georgia. Phil Walden is starting a studio. And all the guys that we played in Otis's band and Joe Texas band and Percy Sledge's band, we gonna go down there and be the studio band." The only thing anybody knew anything about this was Cadillac. He had this vision, man, about a lot of stuff. He was great about putting stuff together. Well, the only somebody went down there, Jackie Avery was already down there. He's the guy that really wrote These Arms Are Mine. So he was already down there. Phil had him down there as a in-house writing artist. And for a good while, I was down there, and maybe one or two other guys popped in there to see what was happening. And it was like, I got there in July '68. Studio, they started building on the studio in '69. And I don't know when they recorded the first date or whatever, but it was about 70, because they put in so many of that equipment, and somebody would come down and say, "Man, that stuff is outdated or whatever." They pull it out and put some more. They must have went through 3 different
consoles and all that stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff. They must have went through 3 different ones. And once they finally got it together, it was like cool. But I did the last rhythm and blues say that I did was with Clarence Carter's band. It was in December, the end of November, with this guy Blue Walden, who was Phil Walden's older brother, asked me, said, what's his name? Clarence Carter needed a drummer and a bass player for a couple of weeks until he got some new players in because the other ones had left. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I ain't got nothing else to do. So I did that for a couple of weeks. And the first week, $150, $175, ever what the hell it was, turned to $120 because supposedly I didn't drive. So that was $25 a week if you drove. And they took out income tax, which at that time in 1968 was about $21. Now, I guess maybe $5 on 100 or something, what the hell it was. So I said to myself, where's my money? He said, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this. I said, okay. So I'm thinking, one more week of this shit and I'm out of here. So that's fine. I did another week and nobody has come yet. So it's a man like, you want to stay on, you guys can stay on because maybe a while before Clarence gets somebody. I said, man, I'll stay until you get somebody. And then I'm done. Because you don't leave somebody in a hole because, of ever what kind of reasons. You just don't do that. So when you get somebody, I said, then get somebody. I'm gone. I was sitting around Macon. This was like right before Christmas. I was sitting around Macon playing gigs here, playing little gigs there, for $10, $12, $15 or something. And one night I played this gig, and the guy gave you like a couple half of pints to split between the man, and you got the money off the door. Mm-hmm. Well, I think the first night we made about $8 a piece. And then that Sunday night, I think we made about $5 or something a piece. And I said, man, I'm going to New York. I said, I'm going to New York and be a jazz musician because if I'm going to be starving to death, then I'm going to starve to death in jazz musician style, And that's when I got this call from Jackie Avery. And he said, hey, man, he said, Phil's been trying to find you. He want to know if you want to go down to Muscle Shoals and play in Dwayne Allman's band. And I said, man, I'm going to New York. And I told him the whole story. And he says, well, Jay, I tell you what. He said, you should go down to Alabama, talk to Dwayne, meet him, y'all play some, and if you don't like it, then go to New York and be a jazz musician. So I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking, I heard the guy play. I never thought I'd end up playing with him, but I heard him play. Because Jackie Avery told me, he said, Jay, I ain't never heard nobody play like Skyman. That's what they used to call him down at Muscle Shoals. Those who didn't know him, those who knew him called him Dwayne Dog. Avery said, I played. He said, Phil wanted me to take this music down there and play it for Dwayne. He said, I played it. He said, the only thing interested Dwayne, he said he wasn't interested in Johnny Jenkins, who was a fabulous guitar player and singer and stuff. He was the guy that Otis traveled with and was like a roadie, valet and stuff. And Otis did that because he got to sing. wherever he was at, doing whatever, because he did that in a number of places in California.
So Otis was the valet for Johnny Jenkins.
Yep. In California, he did that same thing with Jackie Avery was the singer. That's how he knew that song. And when he went to Muscle Shoals, when he went to Memphis, he asked them if he could record it because they had this time left over. So they said, yeah, why not? So he did it.
We're talking about These Arms of Mine. Just to
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So he said the only thing that Dwayne wanted to know was who was the drummer and would he play in my band. So after the conversation with Avery, I remember my friend Charles Otis, Honey Boy, who was my favorite drummer because I learned so much from him, not about music, but about life. Honey Boy, they call him. He gave me one drum lesson. I had this Joe Morello book on odd meters and stuff, and I showed it to him one day, and he said, "Let me see that." He took it, he looked at it, he closed it up. He said, "Let me show you something." He said, "If you can play this beat," he said, "you can play anything." And he showed me this little beat, and I finally learned. It took about 2 weeks to learn how to play it. But like most things, that was just let's say, a mantra to get you in touch with God or ever who the hell you believe in or what. Because once you get that kind of stuff going, you basically can do anything because you realize that it's just a matter of being able to separate your mind some kind of way.
There's some kind of polyrhythmic thing you're talking about?
No, it was just a simple, basically it was a jazz beat that I heard Blackwell play a lot, and a few other drummers. Sound like something that you would play in Horace Silver's band. You're playing this on the cymbal, and you're playing this on your snare drum, between your bass and your snare drum. You know, it's like call and answer thing. Mm-hmm. And it took me a while to learn how to play it because I had to get it in my head. But Honey Boy told me, he said, I remember I was 16 years old, and he told me, he said, "Hey man, let me tell you something." He said, "If you want to make some money," he said, "go play with them white boys." And when I got off the phone with Avery, and that thing went through my head, it went like boing, a little light. And he said, "Go play with them white boys." And I went to play with Dwayne to make money. Jerry Wexler was partners with Phil Walden and Jerry, what's his name down in Muscle Shoals? I mean, down in Muscle Shoals.
Jim Hall.
And it's like, how can you not make money with somebody like that?
Right.
You know. So I went down there and I met Dwayne, and I set my drums up over in this studio where they did like recording soundtracks and stuff, big place. And in the other studio was a little bitty thing. The room was about a little bit bigger than this maybe. And I set my drums up over there, and Jim?
Rick Hall.
Rick Hall. Jesus Christ. Rick Hall had this little thing that he let me use. It played 12-inch LP, so it played little 45s, and you could plug into it with headphones, and you could not disturb anybody. So man, I sit there like all day playing along with Coltrane and never who in the hell else I had played with whenever I practiced or played. And when Dwayne got through with a session, he'd roll that baby right over into that room, and we'd fire up. And after about 2 days, I forgot all about New York City and becoming a jazz musician.
But Jaimoe, what were you guys playing? I've always wondered if it's just the two of you and Dwayne. What kind of were you playing? Blues? Were you just
playing.
improvising? Were you
Improvising? he started playing something like he always did from day one. And then when we got in the band, when Barry came down there, it was like, oh my God. Not only had we met ever who you believe in, Jesus Christ or God or whatever, but then we went to heaven. I guess if there's a heaven, that was it, man, when Barry got there, Barry Oakley.
So what kind of impression did Dwayne make on you when you first see him? Was he a typical character for the time and place, or was he just from another planet, or what?
No, he was a guy who knew what he wanted and didn't mess around waiting for somebody to do this or that and the other. He did everywhere he had to be to make a step or whatever. That's what he did. And that was great with me because whenever I was home and wasn't playing music, I was washing dishes, or washing pots, or helping my grandfather mow lawns or whatever, you know. So I admired that about him because he was like, he really didn't need anybody to think for him. It's like, I got this thing I want to do. This is what I'm doing. And if that's what you can help him do some kind of way, then, you're cool. But if you couldn't, you were cool still, but didn't have a lot of time to waste on anything. He loved playing music, and he could play with anybody. What I admired him, I guess, about mostly is the fact that he loved to play music till he could play, with anybody. Because it's like, let's play this song. Well, we don't have no bass player. Let's play this song. Well, we don't have a piano player to play the chords and this and that. I never did understand that, And older guys used to tell me, don't you go to school and study no music. Don't study no harmony, no, what do they call it, a theory. And that's, so you don't need to do that. Don't do it. I never knew what in the hell they were talking about because I always figured if you had some kind of gift, then you could always make it better by learning something about it. But boy, I tell you, sometimes when I see them guys scuffing over E flat against this or that or whatever, it's like, well, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that shit. Because if I did, then it would be with cats who thought the same way. And to basically get anything done, as long as everybody is developed in terms of knowing what they want to do and trying different stuff, that's the only way you can really accomplish that. If you want to learn how to play blues as what we are taught blues is and the way it's approached, and you get guys who can't play nothing but that. You don't get guys who call themselves a jazz musician who can play blues. You get somebody who can play blues, and you learn how to play that stuff because nothing else is being thrown in there. So you really learn what the base of that is and what it's about. And just like anything else. And you say, well, country ain't nothing but blues. Shit, Am I going to get thrown off this radio station?
You'll be all right.
So that's basically the way, we had songs and stuff we'd play when Barry came and when Barry wasn't there. But it was like basically anything we played, it was just a song. It was some music. And you played it, ever what it was.
Jaimoe, one of the things you told me, I think's in the book that I was really struck by was some musicians might be great musicians, but when you play with them, they limit you. They box you in to what you can play. And other musicians open you up to where everyone's horizons keep getting bigger, which is what you felt with Barry and Dwayne. So was that something that you felt right away? Was it like immediately apparent to you that there was something like that going on?
Yeah, because for the first time, and that wasn't any reason it should be any other way, like when we got together with the guys in Jacksonville and stuff, it was like we started to say, okay, Dwayne said, okay, this is going to be the band. And it was like ever what we played was the way we approached it. It wasn't like, someone say, don't play that, play this. Don't play that, play this. because there was a lot of "don't play that" when I was coming up, which was good for me, you know. But you have to be careful how you tell somebody that kind of stuff, you know, because a person can be invincible until you tell them they're not, and then good luck.
And was Dwayne like a natural leader? You know, in the book, people refer to him as a general, or they say that he's mesmerizing, that he was inspiring, that he was connected to a higher order of the world. I mean, how did that translate when you were with him? Did he have those natural leader skills that made everybody follow? And what really was it about him? Could you feel it when you were around him? Did you want to go along with him because he was so focused and energized?
Yeah, because he was focused and energized. A lot of that other stuff is just a lot of words. He was a regular person just like anybody, except he knew what he wanted to do, and that's what he was going to do. And you either joined him doing it and you made yourself in that class that he was in, or, you know, you weren't qualified to be there. You could only be qualified to be there when you could play. And it's so interesting, like today, you see a bunch of people jumping up on the stage, and they got a lot of cats who make so much money, it's ridiculous. And they shouldn't even be on the bandstand, you know? The way I got on the bandstand was I earned my way up there by going to jam sessions, playing one song, and you go next week, and you learn another song, and when you screwed up, the guy say, hey, look here, that's a great kid, but you need to do this, and work on this, work on that. And you worked on this and worked on that until you got, you know, to go to the next step. And like I said, Dwayne, if he said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and a lot of people didn't have that kind of thing, to the point that they weren't interested in, this is what they're playing over here, and if you want to be famous or this, that, and the other, all that other stuff, then you got to do what everybody else is doing. No. That was not Dwayne, and it was not me, and it was not any of the rest of those guys. And he was the leader of that because he, like I said, didn't care about anything except what he wanted to do. And it wasn't that he couldn't work with somebody or whatever, but that's what that was about.
At this time, I'd like to play one of his favorite tracks, and I'm sure it's one of yours as well. Let's play some Coltrane, My Favorite Things. And I don't know, we can talk a little bit about it after. I guess you knew Elvin and stuff, so
yeah.
So we'll get into that. But here's from the album My Favorite Things, The Atlantic. Here's John Coltrane. You're tuned to WKCR 89.9 FM New York. The show is Out to Lunch. My name is David Ellenbogen, and I'm thrilled to have a very, very special guest, Jaimoe, the legendary drummer from the legendary band, the Allman Brothers, as well in the studio, Alan Paul, who has just released an incredible collection. It's an oral history, you could say, of the Allman Brothers band story, all in their own words, and it's on the charts right now. And actually, at the next commercial break, well, not commercial break, but next time we play some music, we'll give away a copy or two to some callers. And also, jazz critic John Coltelli is here, who put us all together. So thank you, guys. It's wonderful to be here with you.
Can I ask a question? You know, Jaimoe, you were always telling me that My Favorite Things, which we just listened to, John Coltrane, of course, was Dwayne Allman's favorite song.
Second.
Okay. So, well, we'll get to the first ones in a minute, but what do you remember what he loved about it so much, and were you the guy who turned him onto it, or had he heard it independently of you?
He had heard all blues, but you know, it was something he heard. I had all of that stuff. I carried that stuff around with me some kind of way, either armful of records or tapes, cassette tapes that I had made some kind of way. And everybody listened to it, you know. And everybody got ideas from it because we were playing that same kind of music at a very elementary level. And we're still juniors. So.
And, well, like, so a lot of the pieces that you guys play seem to really come directly or indirectly from this kind of music. You know, I hear a connection between impressions, you know, Coltrane's impressions, and in memory of Elizabeth Reed. You know, they're both kind of in the same mode. You said that you use some of the same licks, Jimmy Cobb's licks from All Blues in Dreams.
Yeah, not the same licks. I use the exact licks.
Well,
I use exactly. I can take any record that I've played on with the Allman Brothers, and I can show you exactly where I got the lick, as they call them, from. It is exactly the same. The only difference is I'm playing it versus them playing it.
Jaimoe, I know you. I know
you're
you're
in a very different context.
right.
Jaimoe, I know you're very modest about it, but we know that it was your love for jazz and you bringing it into the band as far as listening. You know, I was in that Moroccan listening room at the big house upstairs, and everybody says in Alan's book that when you played Coltrane, everybody listened to Coltrane. Everybody played Coltrane. When you played Miles, everybody listened to Miles. Everybody played Miles. And, you know, human beings got a conscience and a consciousness, and we're all sentient beings. So I know that you introducing those very intense jazz influences to the band affected the actual architecture of these tunes. You know, when I was a kid listening to the Allman Brothers, Duane Allman seemed like the old uncle. As we look back now, he was 24. So a lot of it had to do with growth and maturity. And the Allmans, although they were primed on R&B and the blues and had so much passion, dealing with jazz, I think, allowed them to widen up their musical soundscape real wide and real deep, where they could do things like Elizabeth Reed, you know, which kind of reminds me of Coltrane's Spiritual. Or you get a horrible incident in Birmingham, and Coltrane's response is Alabama. Equinox, those slow, languid, beautiful tunes with a wide landscape where you could not only contribute soul as a musician, but in fact go a level higher and actually start contributing spirit. So how do you feel about that, the actual jazz influence into the Allman Brothers consciousness that allowed them to mature and grow as individuals and as a band?
It did that. It did all of that, and everybody could basically play. What it did was show people in a way, or show everybody in a way that here's a different way to express yourself without leaving the melody, or without leaving the bass, or whatever. And it doesn't have to be so much of this and then 8 bars of this and then the solo and then you're back to ever what. As in terms, I'll give an example. I hope it works. Example of what you just asked me about, what the band, how that affected the band. I'll say it affected the band. I think, and I'm pretty sure about it, I don't particularly care what anybody else think in this case, that what the Allman Brothers did, I think, is the most important thing that we did, is to open the eyes of a lot of Caucasian musicians who were afraid to play. All they did was copy Johnny Be Good and this and that and the other, and they never passed that. When I first started, before I ever played with Dwayne or Barry, I thought white people couldn't play music. I swear to God, I thought they couldn't play music. I thought only people like Stan Getz, Buddy Rich, or certain people like that had the gift. Because supposedly all black people had the gift. Well, they didn't. I didn't. I heard something, I liked it, and I worked on it and tried to develop it. Like dancing. Let me see you do a dance. I can't do no damn dance because I never did, I can get out on the floor and move to certain things that I hear that put any kid on the floor that's a year old and play some music for them and watch what they'll do. It's just a natural thing. I truly know that we have opened the eyes and the ears and the heart of a lot of musicians. 90% of that being white musicians. Because, like I said, they look at the Allman Brothers band and they are completely inspired. More inspired than they were about anything before they ever got into that. And then there's those people who are inspired by it, which I've tried to figure out later on. I hear people talk about, you got me through this, you got me through that. So not only did it inspire musicians, it inspired a lot of other people to do things. Because I'm always telling my wife, everything is relative. As far as I'm concerned, everything is relative. So it don't matter about what the situation is. The answer is pretty much the same if you look at, what you're dealing with. So to me, everything is relative. And that's what I truly think about what happened to the Allman Brothers band as a unit. The same thing. They were inspired by that stuff, and it was like the jazz band or that kind of way of approaching music that I had been studying for a long time. And these guys hadn't been studying that particular personality of it, but they didn't have any trouble adapting to it.
And would you agree, Jaimoe, that it goes beyond race? I mean, in other words, when you were playing with the soul bands, they were sticking to strict 45-minute sets. They ain't playing a minute over. You open up with the Allman Brothers, you start playing 3-4 times longer than that, and nobody's really looking at the clock. Or you have like blues, and then you have Berry coming in, adding like kind of a psychedelic hippie aspect to the whole head of the thing. And the music starts taking off in a different direction. So, like you guys really opened up to real pure soul, irregardless of race, irregardless of region.
Race, I don't think has that much to do with it. I think it's a matter of I think it has to do more with territory than race. And what I mean by that, if no one understands it, is that years ago, kids in bands played John Philip Sousa and Ever What the Hell, and a lot of the bands were great at it, And then guys started throwing in little stuff, pop tunes that was on the radio. And then they started, the band directors who were of another level started throwing in jazz and stuff. And then at 16 and 17, and even younger, here were kids playing outrageous music that, you thought were 40, 50-year-old adults that was playing this music. And it wasn't. So it all has to do with what you present someone with, what's around them, to what inspires them. That gate, anything that you open up to them, they will learn and They do it very, very well. So to me, it doesn't have anything to do with race, but more it has to do with the area, and that's not what I'm looking for. But that's the best way I can say that.
What they're exposed to.
Huh?
In other words, what they're exposed to, and you
Right.
know how much somebody pushes them and gives them the opportunity to see more.
In your book, you mentioned that Greg, just to get his hands on R&B records, to get a Ray Charles, he had to risk getting a beat down, just going to the other side of the track.
Well, I'm not sure if he really risked getting a beat down, but he felt
That's
like
what he
was.
says.
Yeah, no,
he said they caught hell. He had a friend.
Because
and
you got to remember, Greg was, I think, about 13, 14, 15 when he was doing that. So I'm sorry, help me out. That was probably in when he was going with Floyd Miles over to the other side of the track
to buy records,
to go buy these blues and R&B records. So we're talking about this off the top of my head, but about 1963, 64 in Daytona Beach, Florida. And so, yeah, it was. I don't know if he was literally risking getting beaten up, but certainly it was pushing boundaries. He was risking his social standing, such as it was, and whatever. And as he said it wasn't cool for him to go there. It wasn't cool for Floyd to bring him there. Everyone was kind of a little suspicious of them. But I want to, Jaimoe, since you're talking about expansion and how everything relates to everything, I think we're going to listen to Elizabeth Reed in a minute. But in memory of Elizabeth Reed, how did you and you and Butch develop your two drumming things? The way you've always told it to me, you guys just sat down and started playing. And there was no talk about I'll do this, you do that. So
No.
But nobody else has really ever done the two drumming thing quite like you. A lot of the bands that came after that saw, the Allman Brothers have two drummers, we're going to get two drummers. They tend to have two guys who just sort of create more power by playing the same thing. And that's not how you guys ever approached it. So was that a concept, a vision, or did it just happen by playing?
It just happened by playing. Like what I just tried to explain is what you're open to. What do you have? What are you presented with? When I was in high school, I played in the marching band. Butch played in the marching band. Now, when I was in high school, I also played double drums. And the way I played double drums was just like what Butch and I are doing. Always listen to what somebody is doing, and then you find a place where you're playing along with them, and not just a bunch of noise and shit going on, but you relate to something. And to me, the fact that nobody ever did it or anything don't mean nothing, because there's 2 trumpet players, there's 3 trumpet players, there's 4 or 5 trombone players, and there's ever what? And what do? They don't play the same thing unless they're playing something to give a certain power of whatever, but they don't necessarily play everything the same. And that's interesting that a lot of drummers who played in marching bands and played in school orchestras and stuff have different concepts when they sit down to a set of drums. And to me, the only difference is that you switched from an alto saxophone to a tenor saxophone. It's still music, it's still a saxophone, So playing with one drummer in a band like we do, it's still music, and it's still, basically, I'm still doing the same thing by relating to something. I'm playing a part that's the bass drum, and he's playing a part that's a snare drum, only he's playing it on a full set of drums, and I'm playing it on a full set of drums.
All right, well, let's go 43 years back to the day, or we think. This is...
approximately.
Yeah. The Fillmore East, the Allman Brothers Band. You would say you guys are at your peak here, huh? Or you're peaking. This is a band flowing at this time, right?
Yeah, we've been playing together 2 years now, almost 3 years or something. When did the thing come out?
71.
You recorded it in March of '71, so really 2 years. But
Yeah.
but you know, one of my favorite moments in here, all my interviews, is I asked Jaimoe, was Phil Maurice a particularly good recording, or was it just what you sounded like? And he said both.
Right. Well, here we go. We're back in the studio here at WKCR 89.9 FM New York. In the studio here with me is Alan Paul, the author of One Way Out, which is really a page-turner. I burned through this book in like half a week. It's the inside history of the Allman Brothers. Jaimoe, the drummer of the Allman Brothers for the last 45 years, something like that. And as well, jazz critic and writer John Coltelli are here.
You know, Jaimoe, can I ask you something? Mention that he's talking about you being on in this band for 45 years. It's the 43rd anniversary of the recording of what we just listened to at Fillmore East. And you told me one time that when you were in high school, you used to sit in the music room and read Downbeat magazine and read about people in the Duke Ellington or Count Basie Orchestra for 30 or 40 years, and think, how's that possible? How could somebody be in a band for 30 or 40 years? So now, obviously, you can see how it can be done, but do you reflect on why it's done? I mean, do you think when you play music that long with the same people that it gets deeper? Do you reach things of unspoken communication that you just can't have in shorter-term relationships?
You play better with people that you've played with longer, basically. When I was in high school, interesting, it took a while before I realized this, but God sent Downbeat magazine to 33rd Avenue High School for Johnny Johnson. And why did he send it to me? Because I was the one who needed to read it. My band director didn't read it. A couple of football coaches were familiar with it, and they might look at it or something every now and then. But my band director would read it when I showed him an article. If it wasn't about Bird, he didn't particularly care nothing about it. He was an alto clarinet player. He played saxophone, bass, guitar. I used to read Downbeat from front to back, and I'm talking about little ads and everything. So much that I learned from that magazine. So many things that opened my head up. Like a little while ago, you're saying something about. I can't remember what it was, but the answer is, I used to think that, I read a thing of what Dizzy Gillespie said. He said, you can't talk about music, and that's just a concept that is basically true. But you can talk about music, and the reason that you can't is the same reason. Like I said, everything is relative. The reason that you can't is the same reason that you can't talk about a lot of things, because you don't talk about it. That's why you can't talk about music. That's why you can't talk about a lot of other things, because you don't talk about it. Guys found out who went to Vietnam and stuff that something happened to them over there, and it all had to do with Agent Orange and what the hell else was in those jungles and stuff, because they found that after a few years, some of them had an itch, or some of them had a this or that or ever what. And how they found out about it is when they finally start talking about, hey man, I got this so and so and so. And they go, you know what? I got that too. Or I got this. This has happened to me. And it all has to do with you don't talk about it. Because you can talk about music and anything else.
Well, we are talking about music, and you're giving a lot of insight into why all of this works for you and how you approach it. But Elizabeth Reed is a great example, I think, of the double drumming throughout, and especially there at the end. And to me, Jaimoe, it strikes me like kind of a classical composition where you take one instrument, you take another instrument, and you get them playing together, and you have one sound and another sound, but you're creating, in a mystical kind of way, a third sound. And that's how the Allman Brothers drumming always sounded to me. You know, Butch is more straightforward rock, and you're much more leaning towards a jazz side. But when you listen to them together, it is the iconic sound of one of the great American bands. I mean, it has such a unique sound. And you were telling us earlier that when you were in Muscle Shoals, you thought to yourself, I got to go up to New York, and I don't care if I got to be a starving drummer. I'm going to do it in New York. You know, it all seems to have panned out. You're in New York, and you're practically a New Yorker. You guys haunt us every year. But you're also a jazz drummer. You did not allow the band to change you. You stayed with that sensibility, and it helped to really forge a very, very unique sound.
Yeah. Thank you. And that's one of the things that Duane Allman did, was he kept that sound. And a friend of mine, who's everybody is hip to, told me about 7 or 8 years ago. I was in California, and Earl Palmer had these sessions on Monday nights, I think it was, in Hollywood or somewhere, Burbank or somewhere. And so I went by there to see him, and they were getting ready to take an admission when I walked in, and they was playing some kind of something. Anyway, when they got through, I said to Earl, I said, man, you know what? I said, you're the Duke Ellington of the drum set. And he said, well, thank you, Jaimoe. He said, but it's all a matter of making it fit. You know, he said, you can't play this, you can't play that. If you can't play this and can't play that, then you can't play. Because it's all a matter of making it fit. Duane didn't change anything about his playing and stuff when he went to Muscle Shoals to work in that studio, because it was confining as it was when he was trying to do the Hourglass, or ever what band him and Greg happened to have at a particular time. And people kept trying to make it be something else that they didn't want it to be. It was more like what Greg would have wanted than what Duane wanted. And some of the difference in that was that it don't make Greg any less musician or anything, but the way people basically did things, and let's say a troublemaker and a not troublemaker. So Duane was a troublemaker. Duane was not. Greg was not. That may be more simplified to what I'm saying to make sense to anybody than anything. One was a troublemaker and one was not. The troublemaker was adventurous, and he gained a lot of popularity and stuff. Different than Coltrane. Duane and Coltrane seem to have accomplished the same thing. Like Coltrane playing since he was 11 years old, what in the hell, when he started playing clarinet. And Duane, when he picked up the guitar, because he saw his brother playing it, and then he couldn't put it down. He laid the motorcycle down and he picked up the guitar. Well, they seem to accomplish the same thing in a matter of like 4 or 5 years. On record. The recordings and stuff that they did. When did John become a star? When he left, when he went to Atlantic, Giant Steps?
Yes.
Meanwhile, all that other stuff that he had done was sleepers, because somebody said he couldn't play a ballad and this and that and other and some more shit. But he went on and he did what he did. Duane did the same thing through the Hourglass and the rest of it, and then through the recording thing that he had. He figured out how to make things fit, because he certainly didn't change his playing. If you listen to stuff like the Hourglass and that kind of stuff, you can always hear that basic root of his sound. And basically any artist, if you look at that work when they was 4 or 5 years old and look at that work when they're 15 or 20, you'll hear the basic things that they have always done.
But
Whatever what it is that work is.
Jaimoe, what I was wondering about is you talk about how Duane had this vision. He had the idea from when you first met him of 2 drummers and 2 guitarists, and he found obviously the right guys, and he didn't tell you what to play. Everybody did their thing. But do you think he could hear, this is what Jaimoe and Butch are going to sound like together? This is what me and Dickie are going to sound like together? Was it apparent to him when he heard you, when he heard Butch, that the 2 of you were going to be what you were together, or when he heard Dickie that the 2 of them were going to be what they were together?
I guess to somewhat, he must have. And I'll say that. I'll say this to say that. When I was in high school reading that Downbeat magazine, all I could think about was, and this is not even when I was reading Joe Weider magazines, was going to become Mr. America. Thank God I left that trail alone. But I lost my thought there.
You're talking about what you saw, what you learned in Downbeat magazine.
Okay. Well, I wanted to be the world's greatest jazz drummer, the #1 drummer in the Downbeat jazz poll. About, what is this, 14? I guess about 15 years ago now. 96. I was talking to a friend of mine, you all know, Elvin Jones. And I said to Elvin, I said, man, you know what? I said, I just got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And he said, congratulations, Jaimoe, congratulations. And I said, well, it wasn't what I wanted. I said, I wanted to be the Downbeat #1 jazz drummer, and he said, well, Jaimoe, you were just off a few specs. He said, you made it, you were just off a few specs. He said, and then again, he said, it's never too late. He always said that, it's never too late.
Well, I want to go back to those Downbeat days. I'm going to play a track that hit you really early on, and we'll be back with Jaimoe. If someone would like a copy of this One Way Out, we have a copy to give to a listener. We'll mail it out to you. 212-854-9920. That's 212-854-9920. Ready for this one, Jaimoe? You're tuned to WKCR 89.9 FM New York. The show is Out to Lunch. I'm your host, David Ellenbogen. I'm joined by esteemed guests, Jaimoe from the Allman Brothers Band, jazz critic and writer John Coltelli, and the author of the new oral history of the Allman Brothers, One Way Out. By the way, I guess Alan Paul, Alan, you have an event coming up. Is it Jaimoe's going to be there too?
Well, Jaimoe and I have an event together. We're going to be doing something like this in a more condensed fashion, I guess, at the Upper West Side Barnes & Noble on 82nd and Broadway on March 20th, I believe 7 p.m. Or you can always get the details on my website, alanpaul.net. But love to see you there. We'll be talking music, and
they can pick up a copy of the book.
Pick up a copy of the book. You can pick up a copy, I hope, of Jaimoe's great CD we were just listening to.
Yeah, we just heard, we started off with an album the Roundabout Midnight Miles Davis album, which was one of the early ones to hit Mr. Johansson here. And then
56.
Yeah, I think it was 56. And then we heard one from the Jaimoe Jazz Band, which is like really killing band with a wide range of music. We heard that's more the jazz side, but wow, that guy Junior Mack is your vocalist, slide guitarist. Is that correct, Jaimoe? Mm-hmm. That guy, I think more people should know about this guy.
Yeah, I think Junior is really overlooked talent, and I think Jaimoe's jazz band. The album's called Renaissance Man, and I'm not just saying this because I'm sitting next to Jaimoe. It's in my book, in my discography. I call it the underrated gem of the Allman Brothers side catalog, because I think a lot of people know about Warren Haynes' band and Government Mule, and they know about the Tedeschi Truck Band with Derek Trucks, and of course they know about Greg Allman's solo band, the Greg Allman Band, but not enough people know about Jaimoe's jazz band. I think they're just a great band. That obviously was on the jazz side, and some of the stuff is more...
I kind of want to play that Leavin' Trunk from that album.
Jaimoe, can we play Leavin' Trunk?
Play what you want to play.
Okay. Can I have that back?
Sure.
Your show, not mine. I'm just visiting.
So, and then we had some ideas of stuff we wanted to do, because we were focusing on how this jazz music kind of seeped into the music of the Allman Brothers, and you had mentioned that some licks, Philly Joe licks, had come in completely verbatim into "Ain't Wasting Time No More," and also you said that "Dreams in All Blues." There's a relationship.
There was a song that I learned Philly Joe drum solo on, also on that Miles Davis Roundabout Midnight. The "Ain't Wasting Time" thing came from James Black.
Okay, James Black.
One of his signature licks. And there was another one from Jimmy Cobb, Ed Blackwell, and Charles Otis, Earl Palmer. They're all on that record.
and just
those records.
When people bought "Eat a Peach," I don't think too many people are sitting there thinking that they're listening to Ed Blackwell or Jimmy Cobb licks. So you snuck it in there.
Just recycling.
Yeah, well, it's like sneaking the wheat germ into your kid's chocolate milkshake or something.
Man, don't come around here stealing my stuff. They stealing my stuff. Where'd you get it from?
You know, we've been talking here for a while, and I'm sensing a little bit of a pattern here. Jaimoe was in Muscle Shoals, ready to throw in the towel, and he says, "I'm going to New York and being a jazz musician." And that's just about the time he tapped a young Duane Allman on the shoulder and became the first recruit into the band. I know, too, through the book, Alan, that Butch Trucks in Tallahassee was just about to throw in the towel with his band, but tried one last time and got a little fledgling band together, and ironically enough drove to Daytona Beach, where he opened up one night for a band of young, long-haired blonde guys that turned out to be the Allman Joys, and afterwards went to Greg and Duane Allman's house, and that's how they met. In ensuing years, Butch Trucks also was, in a sense, saved by the Allman Brothers band. Now, the writer of this book, Alan Paul, was also somewhere in Florida.
That's
Port
right.
St. Richie, perhaps.
That's right, Newport Richie, yep.
Newport Richie. And he, too, was just about to throw in the towel on his journalistic career, a little tired of writing articles on Little League games. And again, even in that instance, it was an assignment on the Allman Brothers band that got him vamped up and really changed his life. And the band has kind of become part of his identity. He's got incredible access to the band, is very trusted, and wrote a book that is absolutely riveting and fascinating, because the chronological tale of the Allman Brothers band is told through their very words, through scores and scores of interviews he's conducted over the years. So tell us about that moment, Alan, in
John,
Florida, where...
You're kind of freaking me out. I never made that connection before, so I'm having like a little Twilight Zone moment here. Yeah, no, I was, I was frustrated. I'd been out of school for a couple of years. I had one job up here in Hoboken, New Jersey, editing a small weekly newspaper. That kind of fell apart, and I was drifting around doing a little bit of this and that. I worked at a record store on Bleecker Street for 2 days. I got fired because I was helping customers too much. I was supposed to be watching to make sure they weren't shoplifting. I was more interested in, like, figuring out which album had Philly Joe Jones on it. That wasn't what they wanted. So I was at loose ends. My girlfriend got a job down in Florida, so I said, well, I'll go down there with you. So I moved down to Tampa Bay area, Newport Richey, which is sort of the armpit of Tampa Bay, to be honest. It looks like it would have a great beach, but there's no beach. It's right on on the coast. And I was kicking around doing freelance writing and working for the St. Petersburg Times, but I was covering dog training, not Little League, but almost, high school baseball. I'd drive out and to these small rural towns, cover a baseball game. And, there was pre-internet. Then I'd have to run to a little payphone and call in a 50-word story, a 100-word story. Joe Johnson struck out 11 as the Lakeland. And I was sort of having enough of it. So, I was applying to graduate school and was going to become a teacher. I had a bunch of master's things, including Columbia. In fact, I think Columbia was the only place I finished and was admitted to. But I was just about to throw it in, and I got this assignment from Tower Pulse magazine to write about the Allman Brothers, which was my real love. They had just reunited, and I threw everything I had into writing this story. So I sort of bled on the page as much as I could, and came out really well. Indirectly led to me getting hired at Guitar World magazine and changed the course of my life. But I never did think about making the connection about Jaimoe being ready to give up and move, and Butch was ready to give up. I think, Greg often says he was always doubting that they would make it. He was often ready to give up. The one guy who definitely was never ready to give up, as far as I can tell, was Dwayne. I don't think it ever occurred to him that whatever happened, that he wouldn't end up being successful with his music.
And in fact, he turned down a tour with Eric Clapton when, he could have been with Derek and the Dominoes and been an instant.
Right,
rock star.
That was one of the things that was interesting to me in researching this book. As much as I did know before I started writing it, I didn't really realize just how close Dwayne came to leaving. And, Dwayne's daughter, Galadriel Allman, also has a new book out.
Came about this close.
Well, Jaimoe's saying he didn't come that close. But Galadriel has this new book out called Please Be With Me. Where she was 2 years old when he died, and she's looking to get to know him through the book. Also a wonderful book I would recommend to anyone. But one of the things she has in the back are a collection of letters, some from Barry Oakley to his wife Linda, some from Dwayne to her mother Donna, and one of them he talks about that offer from Eric Clapton. Sounds in that letter, Jaimoe, like he was taking it pretty seriously. I mean, he was talking about making, I think, $5,000 a week, and
as opposed to
nothing.
Yeah,
as opposed to negative money. I mean, Jaimoe could answer that. What they were really making.
It's all we're all in the world of speculation now, aren't we?
As opposed to,
I
come to New York City, and I call my man Honey Boy, like I always do, and he said, "Hey man, how you doing?" I said, "I'm doing all right, man. How you doing?" He said, "Look here, Ray Charles needs a drummer. I can make a call and you can go down and do the audition. Probably your gig." And I said, "Now," I said, I almost said, "Why me, Lord?" But I didn't. I just said, "Man," I said, "you wouldn't believe this." I said, "I can't believe what I'm about to do here." I said, "I just got in a band with these cats." And I said, "I don't think Ray Charles and anybody else will make me leave this band." And he said, "Oh, yeah?" I said, "Yeah, man." I said, "You told me a long time ago, go play with them white boys." I said, "Here I am." And I didn't even make the audition, let alone, I wasn't interested anymore. Dwayne left Evermore in Hell we were at. We were in Cincinnati doing some gigs. I don't know whether it was first gig, second gig, or what. But anyway, because we were doing like a weekend, 2 nights or something. This place called Ludlow's Garage. It was a hell of a place. It was like a city. It's like, you tell you what it was like. It was like going backstage at the Rolling Stones gig. It's like they create London off the stage. You go back there and it looks like you're in a goddamn movie or something. You're just waiting on the genie to jump out or somebody to jump out with a big sword and go. And I mean, it's like that, man. It's like unbelievable. So we played a couple of gigs without Dwayne, and then what was it? The third night there, the second night there, which one it was? Dwayne came back. He joined us excuse me. He joined us everywhere we were at, but he went and did those gigs. It was in Tampa and somewhere else I can remember. And he said, "Okay, man. Let's get some playing done." Because when we played a gig in Atlanta, in Miami one time, and Eric happened to be there recording. So he wanted to come see that chap who played the slide guitar. And I guess Dwayne did to him what John Coltrane did to Sonny Rollins. Next thing, the gig is over, and we're invited over to the recording session. Well, everybody went inside, and I went in there, and I heard them playing. And I don't know if it was 2 songs or just 1 song. Anyway, and we had this Winnebago. So I went back outside to the Winnebago, took Tony Williams' Emergency, stuck it in there, and I sit back and waited on the rest of them to come out. Because I really couldn't stand to listen to anything else that was in a different place than where we were coming from. And in terms of that, it was like this, but in terms of what we were playing, it was like this. And, I immediately heard it. I didn't have to go in there and listen to Eric Clapton or anybody else, anything that was going on in there. And I wasn't inspired to do anything except what I did. Butch went in there and played a couple of tracks, something. It's on one of them box sets or something that Eric released. But I just wasn't impressed by anything that was going on in there. Because what we were doing, I couldn't be impressed by that. Not in terms of not even going there and listening to it. And that's what I did. 1 song or 2 songs, that's what it was. And if you listen to that record, which
the Derek and the Dominoes album you're referring to?
A song were they playing
Key to the Highway? Was it Key to the Highway you're talking
I don't
about?
know what
it's a
it
blues,
was.
8-bar blues.
No, it wasn't that. It was. We play a thing we got from Donovan called that was a
Mountain Jam, right?
First, that was a mountain.
Right. First there was a mountain, then it became Mountain Jam.
First that was a mountain.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We started playing it. We called it Mountain Jam. There's some stuff on that we used to play, and still plays, and part of it is from the going into the bridge of that song. And they were playing that on I'm talking about on the record. I didn't ever what they did in there when I was out in the thing. I don't know, but later on I heard the what they had done, and it was like I immediately knew why Dwayne didn't do that, because it's like he had to do what he did. He had to go down there and see It's like Avery said to me, go down there and see, and if you don't want to do that, then go ahead to New York and start the death being a jazz musician. Well, this is when Eric heard what was going on, or Dwayne heard what was going on. He had enough of it, and he came back to where he could play, because he couldn't have played in that band, you know.
Well, I'd like to...
People in that band, or ever what was going on, was not enough. And a lot of people don't understand this, and a lot of them will never get it, that what was going on in that band could not have gone on in Eric's band or anybody else's. And Dwayne immediately knew that.
Wow. Well, that's one of the great bands. I mean, that's a heavy statement, because Derek and Domino's album is widely considered to be one of the great albums of all time.
Right, but
and you're saying that it wasn't enough food for Dwayne Allman to feed off of. It wasn't...
Musically, it wasn't anything that we hadn't been doing for the last year.
Right.
So we were well seated in what we were doing. And the musicians were not bringing that kind of stuff, you know, to that session. There were some fine musicians and stuff, you know. Like, it's like the difference in, oh, what a great drummer. And then the guy goes to a gig to play in a band. And it's like, what happened to that great drummer? Or what happened to the musician? Because he was a great drummer. He still is a great drummer. But he can't play shit in terms of music. You know? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of that. Cats that are great musicians, you know, and great section musicians and stuff. But in a lot of cases of, let's play music. You know? What key and this, that, and other, and some more shit. You only need to do that kind of stuff with lawyers. You know? If you're fixing to operate on somebody, you need to do that kind of stuff. When you're playing music, it's like Miles Davis did it. You go in there and play this and that. That's the way we played. As soon as we heard somebody play a couple of bars or something, or a bar, as always, you hear space to do something. And you don't just start doing something because everybody else is doing something. When you hear a space to do that, it's when you do it. And we were so much advanced from in terms of the way we were playing than anybody else. So our whole thing was way ahead of a lot of other people who had been together for 10, 12, 15 years and on. See how long Dwayne lasted in that band. Somebody can say what the hell they want to say. I was there when he came back.
I want to make sure we introduce our audience while we have you here to a little bit more of your band and this great singer, guitarist, Junior Mack, because I think he's a spectacular talent that some people might not have heard. So I want to play this track, Leaving Trunk, which I've heard is that the track that inspired Dwayne to play slide?
No, that was Statesboro Blues.
Statesboro Blues,
also,
okay.
I believe Leaving Trunk was also on that first Taj Mahal record, but yeah.
So let's just jump into some music, and then we'll be back with all these fine gentlemen. You're tuned to WKCR 89.9 FM New York. The show is Out to Lunch. My name is David Ellenbogen. We're joined by Jaimoe of the Allman Brothers Band. He's been choosing the music and telling us some of the stories of his 45 years on the road with the Allman Brothers and even earlier than that, all the great R&B.
And the day that I met Junior Mack.
And the day you met Junior Mack.
I never said a bad word until I met Junior. He played so well until I was saying stuff I couldn't believe what I was saying.
He's a bad influence.
Yeah. Indeed. And we played a track of Jaimoe's jazz band, starting that set, Leaving Trunk, featuring the said bad influence Junior Mack on slide guitar and vocals. And now we just chose a track selected by Jaimoe, and that was, I never know how to pronounce that, Ta the Aldude? I don't know. exotic record from Alice Coltrane, and
recorded in the Coltrane studio at the Coltrane home in Dix Hills.
Yes, and indeed, and that is a project that's brought us all into this room in a sense, because John Coltelli, our other guest, is a board member of the Coltrane home in Dix Hills.
Where's the record at?
Anyway, somewhere. That's the National Security Agency. Anyway, so you that drum solo there really spoke to you.
Bill Riley.
Ben Riley.
Ben Riley. Right. Oh, the name of that record is Pata.
Is that
the El Daoud?
Pata? Okay. Is that? Do you know what that means? Anybody?
Something Egyptian, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's what it seems like, right?
Yeah.
No, but it's cool to sit here next to Jaimoe as that drum solo is playing, and he's sort of replaying it on the console here.
Right, and he used to know a lot of the riffs from that Miles Davis as well, and horn lines and such. So, believe it or not, we're running low on time, and there's a few things we definitely wanted to do. We wanted to play a little bit of All Blues, which I'm sure our esteemed listeners know like the back of their hand. And then we'll play Dreams, because apparently there's a relationship between the Allman Brothers' Dreams and Miles Davis's All Blues.
And Jaimoe just told us that All Blues was Duane Allman's favorite song. Is that right, Jaimoe?
Yep.
So
his favorite song of all time, All Blues.
So
Miles Davis' version of All Blues.
So what are the elements to your ear that make All Blues kind of fold into, or how did it influence Dreams?
I don't know. One thing I can say that a lot of times, like when you do different kinds of drugs, they can put you in certain kinds of places according to like what you're listening to. When you hear that, ever what it is, your mind can capture things that will sit there. Your mind can capture things that will sit there and look for different releases. And it don't necessarily mean that you do drugs and try to do that. But if you're going to try to do that, you don't do that when you do the drug. Because you'll get lost, you know. And it's like a sound has to be in your head for it to come out. I know that for a fact. If something is not in your head, it's not going to come out. So to me, that a song like that is like, from playing it, I would say, not from listening to it, but from playing it, that it's a drug song.
Dreams.
All Blues.
All Blues is a drug song.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's got that hypnotic, you know, and I know from smoking pot, getting really, when your mind stays together smoking pot, because I used to like to watch cartoons and smoke pot. The pot they got today is so damn strong until I don't bother with that shit no more, because you can't watch anything. You don't even know who you are. But to me, that song, and then Paul Chambers is the bass player on that.
Right.
Paul was a, you know, he used some heavy stuff. As far as I know, maybe Jimmy Cobb was the only cat on there who didn't do any of that stuff. I don't know what his past was, but I don't think he had any past like that as I know of. But that's all I know.
All right.
But you guys took some really direct riffs and ideas from Paul Chambers and Jimmy Cobb, especially into Dreams, didn't you?
For one, it's a kind of 6/8 groove.
What is the bass part on Dreams?
Well, we're gonna listen.
Yeah,
to
let's investigate this
Because I
together.
don't.
So we're gonna.
All I know is Barry started the bass line, and I relate to things by what I hear. It's not preconceived or what. So, ever what Barry was playing caused me to play what I was playing. And it's so interesting that Greg come up with what he came up with. Because originally, Whipping Post was a song just like Stormy Monday Blues, and I remember we were rehearsing this place in a place called the Comic Book Club or something in Jacksonville, and Barry started playing this line on the verses and stuff, and then it went back to the original Stormy Monday Blues in the Sometimes I, well, that's what the whole song sounded like. It's what that turnaround, or is it a turnaround or bridge?
It depends how you want to think about it.
I think of it as the bridge, but I guess you could call it the turnaround.
The whole song sounded like that. So I don't think that song really would have been anything in terms of what it became if it wasn't for that. Jing 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 is basically what it would have been, and he just kind of doctored it up a little bit. Doom jing 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 ding 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 goom ding 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 ding,
and the rest is history.
Yeah. And we did a lot of songs like that. Simple, just show you how simple it is to make something. It don't take building a railroad to get from here to the next block. Simple little bass line.
All right, on that note, let's check out All Blues, a little segment of it, go into Dreams, and then we'll see if we have time for any of those others. We're here in the studio with Jaimoe of the Allman Brothers. You're tuned to WKCR 89.9 FM New York. I'm here in the studio with Alan Paul, the author of One Way Out, the Inside History of the Allman Brothers Band. He is going to be with our other very special guest, Jaimoe, the drummer of the Allman Brothers from the beginning. That'll be March 22nd? 20th. March 20th, Upper West Side, 82nd, Barnes and Noble and Broadway? No, I mean...
Yeah, 82nd and Broadway,
yep.
And I believe it's at 7 p.m.
7 p.m., and you can meet both Alan and Jaimoe in person, pick up a copy of the book. Also, the great jazz writer and board member of the Coltrane home, John Coltelli, is here. Thank you, John, for everything you do.
Alan and Jaimoe, thank you so much for being here. You really have been informational and inspirational, and I thank you for it.
Thank you. I think this is our natural setting for each of us.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, it's been a real pleasure.
A pleasure. We'll be back here tomorrow.
You can. Amen. You can. That was a real invitation.
Yeah, we're having too much fun in the record stacks.
Yeah.
In there.
We're gonna finish off with the last minute or two. Because I know you love this album. I know you love Ed Blackwell, and this is Eric Dolphy at the 5 spot. So maybe you have a word about Ed Blackwell before we say goodbye, Jaimoe?
I learned a lot about drum conversations with Ed Blackwell. A lot of stuff, the way he plays, especially a lot of the stuff that people are trying to play and they don't have any idea about. It's all about just a conversation, but it has to make sense. It may be as radical as it can be, but it has to make sense. I did one CD. It's called Ed Blackwell, actually a tribute to Ed Blackwell. And the way it really started was because this guy, a friend of mine, who was Blackwell's manager, Kunle Imwanga, wanted me to donate some money to the Chicago Art Ensemble to come to play at this. Ed was teaching at in Newtown, Middletown. And I said, well, look, why don't you let my band play? And we'll take the money that we make from that and donate it to their salary. He called me back in about 5 minutes, and he said, why don't your band just play? And I went, oh, yeah? So I jumped at the chance. And so we played. I said, let's record this. And we recorded it. And when it came out, we called it Ed Blackwell, because the whole thing was about raising money for Blackwell's, what the hell it was. I don't remember what it was. And when Ed was real sick, he used to be right down. He was in the St. Francis Hospital, which is right down the street from where I used to live in his condos. And I used to walk down there and see him. He'd be sleeping a lot. His wife just be sitting there with him. He was sleeping a lot. Anyway, Ed Blackwell. Charles Otis reminds me a lot of Ed Blackwell when he plays jazz. Whew.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll hear a little Eric Dolphy with Ed Blackwell, Booker Little, Ma Waldron, Richard Davis on bass. And we hope you guys will all come back. Listeners, thanks for joining us. It's a real pleasure.
Jaimoe.